This is special video number 4, and it's all about horse riders. There's always been a part of me that feels somewhat reluctant to model and paint these because it seems like I have to do twice the work to complete each individual figure. But of course, that's mad, and Tilea needs horsemen. I'll start with some very Tilean knights, which I intended would be used for various non-player character forces of the various city-states in my campaign. They appeared in part 23 as Prince Gorenzo of Trantio's bodyguard. As I try to do whenever I can, I turn to real-world history for inspiration. If the old world's empire is a bit Holy Roman Empire, then surely Tilea has to be a bit Italian wars. One of the books I was using for research had some helpful images on the cover. Prettily decorated, mounted men-at-arms with colourful barding and bare wooden lancers. I can do that, I thought, and so I got some Italian Wars gendarmerie from Wargames Foundry's Casting Room Miniatures collection. I bought them from their premises during a little Oldhammer convention a few years back, but I didn't notice that the lancers weren't included, so I had to carve my own out of barbecue sticks. I think they turned out okay, and being real wood, that meant I could just stain them and use them as is. Here you can see the entire regiment. Some of the designs were inspired directly by the book cover, some inspired by a Google Images search. I'm not good at neat and tidy detailing, and the enamels I was using limited me further, but I've never let that stop me. As my style of painting is cartoon in nature, did it really matter if the patterning wasn't exactly symmetrical or evenly tessellated? I don't know where the figure sculptor got this particular idea of fluted armour, as all the real-world images I've seen, they don't look quite like this at all. But does it really matter when the models are part of a fantasy world, in which oddly decorated armour is the least of the many diversions from historical reality? Next up, I'm going to take you back in time, all the way to the early to mid-1980s, when the year 2000 AD was a date from science fiction. Well, from the future, but it had Judge Dredd and the like in it. In the battle report of Part 11, recounting the Duchess Maria's attempted escape from the vampire Duke Alessandro at Urbino, there were some pretty ancient horse figures in the role of the Arrabbiati Brotherhood. Since then, I've modelled and painted some new figures for them, which will be in a later special video. They're peri-miniatures, metals and plastics, and here's a sneak preview of their command figures. The earlier versions are old warrior miniatures Normans, which underwent some pretty simple millicut conversions. Simple I can do. Here you get an idea of what they look like if unconverted. Chainmail, kite shields, pot helms and spears. I had a whole army of them, and I modelled most of them as they came. This picture is lifted from the report of an old reenactment 1st edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle game I ran a few years ago now, using only figures I had in 1984. I found out, however, that they could be given quite a different look using milliput. This is a regiment I turned into black-clad evil riders, inspired by the film Conan the Barbarian. I could only work with whatever figures I could afford at the time, and I really wanted some figures which looked like Thulsa Doom's riders. Here, the same base models have been turned into northern tribesmen serving the gods of chaos. I never was a fan of chaos armies, I don't know why. Which is why the only chaos-themed army I made was mostly just barbarian nomad types who worshipped chaos, but mostly hadn't yet begun mutating into oddities. Here you can see 5 identical figures, all made to look a little bit different. I used these in my Warhammer Fantasy role-playing campaigns, way back when the Warhammer world had not actually been created. As the 1st edition rules were subtitled A Mass Combat Fantasy Role-Playing Game, then we used them for both wargaming and role-playing. For the latter, I created my own world with maps and realms and the like, and had to do all sorts of extra work, coming up with price lists and house rules galore. Here are 4 more conversions of the same base figure. Having very little funds back in my teens, I did what I could to add variety. I was careful with the milliput too, as that wasn't cheap either. Here's another 4, all built up from the same mould. While we're still in the 1980s, here's a picture of some of the other figures I used back then, and in the reenactment game, being, I think, old Essex miniatures models, with a Citadel Gandalf. These are so old that my painting had yet to settle into cartoon mode, although the style can be seen in the foot soldiers, Essex miniatures and warrior miniatures in the background. The archers, I think, were painted by a university friend of mine circa 1987. The realm of Pavona in my Tilean campaign utilises the Empire army list rather than the house-ruled Tilean one that the other players use, and also uses my old Middenland army figures. These are mostly Games Workshop, with some War Games Foundry and some artisan design models thrown in. The heavy horse are all old Citadel plastics, being some of my favourite figures. Here you can see Duke Guidobaldo with his knightly bodyguard. The Duke, in red, is a Citadel Miniatures metal, sitting on a plastic horse, while his son, Polcario, seen better in this picture, is an even earlier form of Empire Knight. Again metal, but on a plastic horse. The others are plastic throughout. Polcario was painted by my brother back in the mid-1980s and was his role-playing player character. Andy modelled the barding out of Milliput, as the horses we had were unarmoured. Once I saw what he could do, I started putting Milliput barding on several of the same horses, getting a bit more ambitious, making chainmail and plates of armour, and even Milliput reins, which miraculously have survived for more than 35 years. The horse at the far end of this picture never got any barding added. Either I was too lazy or I wanted some variety. You can see some of them better in this picture. And here they are in an old pre-Tilean campaign battle report with the red cloak guy that my university friend painted, adding his own much thicker style of barding, almost burying the horse beneath the milliput. I don't know why, but I've always especially liked the guy who has the white club-like flower on his dark, red, silky barding. The mercenary Compagnia del Sole's riders made an appearance in Part 24 in the battle report called What to Do with Caution on a Still Day. Their mounted men-at-arms look pleasantly pretty to me. Here they are unpainted. They're plastic Perry miniatures from the box WR40 Mounted Men-at-Arms 1450 to 1500. I had some difficulty putting these together. Nothing to do with the figures. It was just a faulty batch of glue. Never before, in all my decades of modelling, had I encountered dodgy polystyrene cement. I'd only ever heard the stories. They kept falling apart on me, as the glue just wouldn't hold, going all brittle instead of melting the two pieces together. Ever since, I've been expecting them to begin crumbling at some point. I painted them in the Compagnia's colours of maroon and dark blue, but went with the yellow and white of their officers' panache feathers for the lancers. When I saw the result, I was very happy with them. Now for something a bit more adventurous, modelling-wise, and although they are artillery pieces, they still feature men on horses. These were in Part 48, in the story Holier Than Thou, when the mercenary Capitano Pandolfo da Barbiano made his appearance with his brace of galloper guns. One of this pair of galloper guns is the official Citadel Games Workshop Bronzino model. The other is a facsimile of my own devising, mainly due to the fact that I couldn't get my hands on another at anything like a reasonable price. To be honest, I've forgotten how I got the first one. I think it might have been gifted to me by someone who left the hobby. I probably would have kit-bashed the second one, even if I could get a second official model, as it's nice that the two guns and teams aren't clones. First, I hacked the wheels off an old toy cannon. Actually, I'd already broken the original barrel off to make a kit-bashed organ gun. Then, later, I replaced the missing barrel with a bullet casing for some reason. The end result was somewhat silly, so I wasn't bothered about breaking the wheels off for this new project. Can you tell I never throw anything away? Then I fashioned up a frame not dissimilar to the official model, using a soft plastic English Civil War 20mm scale model and a Perry Miniatures plastic horse. I added a collar of real wool to the horse's neck, painted with glue, and then I fashioned up some crewmen from the Perry Miniatures WR20 Mercenaries European Infantry set to mimic the official model style. Gathering up the pieces, I began assembling and painting the wood and the metal. I went for a livery of red and green as I wanted this company to be an independent mercenary unit, not part of my famous Compagnia del Sole. Here's the official Citadel model, and here's my kit-bashed version. Together, I reckon they make a lovely brace of guns. What will become of brave Capitano Pandolfo, I wonder? Well, of course, I already know, but you'll find out in future videos. So many models have very short careers in this campaign, as the tabletop battles can be brutal. I can't fiddle the results, that wouldn't be right, but just report the story as it unfolds. The Compagnia del Sole's mounted crossbowmen are the Perry Miniatures WR60 Light Cavalry set. They are liveried accordingly and carry the Compagnia's baton and half-sun emblem on their cornet. Actually, now I come to think about it, I don't think they've made their official appearance in the videos yet, which means they must be part of the Estalian branch of the famous company, which split into two over some disagreement years ago. So this picture is another glimpse of the future. Here are the command group, with some long yellow feathers to help mark out the ensign, even if his colours are hanging limp in the calm. Missus. And here's a fellow who has an inscrutable expression, mainly due to my random throw-the-paint-on style. I am working on a different, hopefully better way of doing faces, now that I've entered the very different realm of acrylics and washes, dips and shades, contracts, etc. and whatnot. Here they come on pell-mell. And here they all are together. As usual, I did their bases in my super exciting, and being sarcastic, plain flock style. I'll never change this, as it lends itself very well to my buckets of flock method of hiding bases in the story photos. In the videos up till now, the mounted crossbow have been really old warrior miniatures models, possibly First Crusaders, painted up by my old university friend, and then repainted to the correct livery by me later. You can see some of them in this picture from part 24. The Pistoliers of both Pavona and Porto Maggiore have appeared a few times already in the videos. Confusingly, they both have blue and white livery, due to Damo and myself both having blue and white Empire armies. But that had helped me to put the stories together, as I can use my figures to represent both Damo's and Matt's. They are all Citadel miniatures, both relatively recent plastics and some kit-bashed from the old Regiments of Renown set called Volans Venetors. These two are from the relatively recent, well, to me, all-plastic Games Workshop Citadel set, which could be turned into both Pistoliers and Outriders. The older models, metals on plastic horses, I got from a War Games convention in an odd box which I'm told was some kind of mail-order Trolls box. They came with no lance arms and unbarded horses, and so were very affordable, if an odd thing to sell. There must have been some sort of mistake in the numbers of bits moulded. I kit-bashed them into Pistoliers, which you can see here. One model, near the middle, is an official old metal Pistolier. The others are Volans Venetors with pistols made by me from bits of plasticard and odd pieces from spare sprues. Later, I got a hold of some metal Pistolier bodies and turned them into dismounted Pistoliers, 3 of which you can see here in the middle of a group of 5. I used legs from the plastic Free Company sprue, Games Workshop, and stuck the Pistolier upper bodies on top. One of these featured in the video part 30. Here are some kit bashers in the other direction, not turning mounted models into foot soldiers, but turning foot models into mounted characters. These are old Citadel models, one of which I jammed onto a horse so that a character in our role-playing campaign had models for when he was both mounted and dismounted. Milliput allowed me to add the pack. Here is a real oddity, which I'm not sure really worked. Somehow I got a dwarf to ride a pony whilst waving an axe about. Why I did this is lost in the mists of time, but I probably thought I should have a mounted dwarf model in my collection, just in case a dwarf player character decided to go riding. I forgot to include my Bretonians. Well, except now that's a lie, because here are some pictures. These are all Citadel miniatures, plastics, and none of them have any kit bashing or such. Apart from the fact that they're painted in enamels, they're pretty much standard Bretonians. The next story video should appear fairly soon, featuring a confession made in a lovely garden. There are loads more topics I could do as special videos, hopefully more interesting than a bunch of horse riders, and so I'll do some more at some point. There are even more mounted models I can show you, from the Brabanzon riders, mercenary Bretonian light horsemen, to skeleton riders, old and new, metal and plastic. But I think I will wait until they make an appearance in the videos before I do any special videos about them. In fact, I think I'll do a whole video about my undead figures. While I'm here talking about horsemen, here's a photo of my table right this very moment. I'm painting some new knights for Remas, which is another adventure in acrylics for me. I don't say this at the end of the story videos, but these special ones seem like a different kettle of fish. So, here goes. Please do like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please do tell other potentially interested people about Big Small Worlds and my Tilean campaign. Ta-ta!